And joining us to talk a little bit more about the coronavirus impact on the markets, global economic and market strategist from the University of Miami, Michael Szanto. Michael, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're very welcome.
So this week, the markets have been all over the map. Dow futures down again this morning, big time. What would it take to establish any sense of normalcy here?
Us getting very lucky with this virus, because right now we're facing possibly a very severe simultaneous supply and demand shock, where we have factories idled, supply chains disrupted, and people not wanting, obviously, to take cruises or go on vacations, and concerts potentially being canceled here in the United States as well. There's talk of, for example, back in Miami, Ultra Music Festival being delayed, postponed.
Yeah, South by Southwest, other big conferences as well. At least not South by Southwest, not canceled, but we've seen some big companies pulling out of it. Clearly, the effect on airlines is becoming more apparent. United and JetBlue have started to cut service. Do you expect that we'll be seeing this throughout the travel industry?
Absolutely, and beyond. Obviously, many corporations are starting to take measures so their employees can work from home. A benefit of this is that it can have positive effects, that capability, flexibility, and efficiency for your economy long term. But in Italy, they're playing soccer games without any fans. And that's a major example of our entertainment industry in general, not just travel and hospitality, because wherever people are in big crowds, they could potentially spread this rather lethal virus.
So here in the U.S., of course, we're not there yet, but there could potentially be supply shortages from factories in China and abroad. How might that play out? How long do you think that we could see potential shortages? I'm thinking of everything from clothing, iPhone parts, things like that.
I mean, absolutely. So the comparison that's being made is the shock with the oil crisis in the 70s, where we had lines with gas stations. But this is hitting more industries, factories, supply lines. It can affect cars, car parts, iPhones. It can affect a lot of the things that we're used to being able to buy. But the other thing is everyone's talking about the very limited ammunition central banks, including the Federal Reserve, have right now in fighting off a recession, with interest rates starting out before the virus crisis and the potential pandemic with low interest rates. But the problem here is when you have supply shortages, you start to worry about inflation simultaneously. And that's what could set this apart from the recessions we've dealt with since the early 80s, including the Great Recession, that we actually have a supply shortage at the same time that we're dealing with a shock to demand.
What did you make of the surprise rate cut by the Fed? Markets clearly not impressed.
Right. I mean, part of it is actually buying the rumor, selling the news. So there was some of what pushed up the market the day before was the expectation that central banks, including the Fed, would lower rates. Another thing is doing an emergency measure that was only done at 9/11 and at the height of the Great Recession or financial crisis is not the greatest confidence boosting effect. And perhaps showing that President Trump really pressuring the Fed hard to do it really rapidly might have backfired, because the dramatic nature of it might not have been the most inspiring measure.
Yeah, a kind of feeling of like, what do they know that we do not know?
Exactly.
Are there any bright spots in all of this? Oil prices are down. I guess that's pretty good for airlines, for people who are looking to drive. Any other areas that might actually do well?
Well, I mean, we're in a transformative time in our economy where people are increasingly working from home, they're shopping from home, and they're also, getting entertained by things like Netflix, although I actually think Netflix remains overvalued. But so there are positive and negative effects. It's creating the retail apocalypse. So I think it's a catalyst for that. Our ICUs, if this gets bad, our ICUs and ERs could get somewhat swamped. So I think eventually there has to be investment in our hospitals so that they're more robust for the occasional dangerous pandemic. And some of the measures that are being taken to stop this seem scary, like dance marathon being canceled at my alma mater, Northwestern. But that used to be done, I think, for a bad outbreak of chickenpox and measles back in the day. But hopefully we become more robust for the next potential threats, and we're better able to handle it as well.
All right, I guess one silver lining. All right, Michael Szanto, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.